Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Property Journey podcast, episode 16. Welcome, Roy.
Thank you.
And we've also got our guest on board today, Jim Smyth.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
Jim is a mortgage advisor for First Stop Mortgages in Portadown. So it's great to have you, Jim. Hopefully we'll be able to touch on everything to do with mortgages, help out our listeners when it comes to that sort of thing. So Jim, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, how you maybe ended up as a mortgage advisor.
Yeah, that's a roundabout story. So yeah, Jim Smyth, originally from Portadown, and got into insurances first of all in 2007. I took out insurance, and the guy that came around to see me was sat and spoke to me and Jim, you could probably sell this. I wouldn't be interested. Sent him a load of clients. And after about 6 months, he came back and went, "You really should be doing this instead of sending me all your business." So started doing insurances. Fell out of it about 2009 whenever everything sort of went belly up, and then got back in 2012. So from 2012 to 2017 it was insurance only, that's all we done. But we had lots of clients always asking, "Do you do mortgages? Who do you recommend for mortgages?" We find it so complicated to try and get the right advice, and the feedback we always got in the insurances was that we kept everything simple and easy to understand. So we sat down and looked at it and went, right, this is probably an area that we should move into. So got the qualifications. CMAP qualified, which is the qualification you need to get for mortgage advice, and I've been doing mortgages now from 2017. And following the same ethos then with the insurance, keeping it simple, not trying to look like the smartest guy in the room, and making sure. One of the things that I would say to people, I know I've done the job right if they can leave my office, go home and tell their mum and dad everything that I've explained, and that mum and dad then aren't hitting them with a load of follow-up questions, and that proves that we've done our job right. So built our mortgage business from scratch in 2017 to now, to the point where we're doing about £3.5 million worth of mortgage lending every month, and clients across Northern Ireland and England, Scotland and Wales, thanks to COVID. So yeah, we're now UK wide.
It's a big operation to be UK wide, and 3.5 million, in terms of lending side of things, it's a big figure.
Yeah, that's where the grey hair comes from.
At least it's not falling out.
Well, this is true. It's still there. It doesn't matter what colour it is, right?
It's positive.
As long as it's still there. Yeah.
It's because there's obviously, in terms of recent times, whenever it comes to mortgages, as you say, there was obviously, we've talked about it, Roy, in terms of the dip in the recession, and back in that sort of, as you mentioned, 2009 to 2012, everything was a wee bit up in the air. We had that period of interest rates being at such low record levels that became the, as we like to say, the normal.
That's right.
The new normal, which really wasn't normal.
Yeah.
So there's been a big shift recently, probably within the last 18 months.
Yeah.
For especially when it comes to interest rates and mortgages, that big shift has certainly had an impact in terms of how people are seeing things. Would you say that you've sort of witnessed that, or?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things we had I remember sitting in the Sega Hotel December 2019, and Danske were there and their chief economist was there as well, and they had said that the interest rate had been kept low that time. It was around Brexit, and they wanted to make sure the mortgage market kept moving, but they shared with us that the Bank of England's plan from January 2020 was that they were going to start raising their interest rate up to the target they want, so somewhere in between the 2.5-3.5%, and that we should start preparing ourselves that interest rates in 2020 would go up to around 4-4.5%. They always say, if you want to make God laugh, tell them your plans. So January 2020, COVID hit, and the world just exploded. Bank of England probably panicked, rates dropped to 0.1%, and we never seen that 4.5%. I remember doing mortgages, fixed deals for 0.99%, but everyone thought this is the normal. The problem with that then, everyone started maxing out on what they were able to afford, and now that it's coming back right, it probably is where it would have been 2020, 2021. Now that it's getting there, and those people that in 2020 and 2021 are remortgaging, they're finding that their payments are jumping up 2, 3, some of them £500 a month, to the point where people are actually having to sell those houses because they can't afford them anymore. So we noticed a massive change. first change we noticed for the negative side of it was probably when Liz Trust and her cabinet under famous budget and destroyed everything. That October then we just went dead. We went from £2 million of mortgages to £500,000, and that lasted for about 6 months. And it's only been this last year or so that started picking up again. Now we're seeing the shoots of recovery, more people's coming back in, but we're still a bit off at getting to where everything should be settled. The problem is that we have people contacting us every week going, Jim, what are rates going to be like next month? What are rates going to be like in January 25? And anyone that says they know where they're going to be is an absolute liar, because none of us know. We can guess, we can surmise where it's going to be, but you can't give anyone the direct answer. I think we'll have a better idea by December 2025, because the Bank of England, again, they're hoping to get their rate back to where that sweet spot, and they said by then, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. Bank of England's meeting on the 20th, and be interesting to see what they do. Will they follow suit with European Central Bank? Will they hold fire? So it's a lot of what ifs and maybes.
It's one of those things, interest rates generally, home buyers don't know anything about it and don't really need to know about Bank of England. We've talked about it a few times, trying to explain and describe and give people a bit of information about it, but that's what's in a way causing a bit of uncertainty, which buyers don't really need to know. It's just a matter if the Bank of England settled and interest rates were there, yes, they maybe go up and down a wee bit, it wouldn't have a big impact. Whereas at the minute, it's just people don't really need to know, and that's what's maybe holding them back from just making that decision. They maybe want to buy a house, but it's just that wee fear thing that probably shouldn't be there anyway in the first place.
I think the main thing with home buyers as well, and we try to explain this to everyone, and more so maybe if they went and spoke to their parents, they would realise this: your mortgage is going to last 25 to 35 years. You will get highs and lows. There will be times when I'm the hero because I'm coming and going, I'm saving you this much every month, or we can take time off your mortgage, and other times I'm going to be the villain because we're saying your mortgage is going to go up. So you have to appreciate that there's going to be those changes in the market. I agree with you, Roy. The interest rate doesn't really matter. The purchase price, in my eyes, doesn't really matter, whether it's 150 or 155. What matters, or what clients should look at, is their monthly payment. And if the monthly payment is affordable to them, forget about interest rates and forget about what the house price is now and what it might be in 5 years. As long as you can afford that monthly payment and you've a bit of wiggle room, because we've noticed, it's a strange phenomenon, but young couples that move into houses together end up having babies. I don't know why it happens, but it seems to happen. And I have 3, and I know that they're expensive. So you can't max out at the very start. You have to be sensible and go, right, forget what the interest rate is, I'll forget what the house price is. Can I afford this monthly payment? And so to leave me room to live. And if something does happen on down the line, do I still have that wee bit of wiggle room?
I think that's the big thing I think, Jim, even we've had this conversation about that, where you've always got to make sure that you don't max yourself out, because as you say, you can't predict what people's mortgages are going to be like in 2 months' time, never mind 2 years' time. And if you're sitting at that point of you're maybe paying £900 or £1,000 a month in your mortgage, but that's you maxed out, and it goes up that little, just that wee bit extra, where are you sitting then in terms of, if you can't afford that monthly payment, you're going to lose the house.
Absolutely.
Which is where the risk is. But if you've kind of reduced that and you're maybe sitting at £800 a month, but it goes up 50 quid, you can absorb that because you've got that wiggle room, so why take the risk?
Absolutely. One of the big things for buyers, whether they're first time buyers or they're not, I think it's really important that they take advice from the experts. So one example I always remember, clients were buying a house actually here in Armagh, and I looked at their affordability, and I suggested at the time to go for the longest possible term on the mortgage to keep the monthly payments down. And then, now their budget allowed them to pay more, so I suggested make overpayments instead of fixing yourself to that higher price. They didn't do that, and they went with a 25-year term because mum and dad had said mortgage should only be for 25 years. Whenever the rate came around again, the monthly payment was going up by £300 a month. And they came to me panicking, we can't afford to pay the extra 300. What do we do, Jim? It's like, well, we need to remortgage the property and let's extend the term now, so we can absorb that £300, and then when the rates drop again, we can look at shortening the mortgage. And they did that. If they done it the first time, they wouldn't have had to add that time on. When it would have came round again, they would have been able to absorb that 300. I've seen other people, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, Roy, where they're in the position now where they've no choice, they've had to sell their house. One client in particular, their mortgage was going up £500 a month, and they can't afford it, so now they're having to sell and downsize. But the unfortunate thing is, the house they're downsizing to, the payments on it are going to be the same as they're paying for the house that they're in at the moment. So I think the big thing for anyone buying a house, don't come in with a fixed idea of what you want and what the mortgage has to be. Listen to the people that know what they're talking about. So listen to the estate agents, listen to your mortgage advisor, and listen to your solicitor.
You mentioned there about overpayments. Do you ever come across many of your clients that do make the overpayments? So from whenever you first take the mortgage out to remortgaging it in 2 years or 5 years time, do you see many have made overpayments?
I wish you could see more. I'd listened to one of your other episodes and you hit the nail on the head where people will sit with you going, yes, we're going to make regular overpayments. Give us a couple of months to settle in, and they don't always do it. I don't think people realise that their overpayments, depending on the lender, most of them will let you do 10%, some of them will let you do 20%, but that overpayment all comes off the principal. None of it's lost in interest, which is why I tell people go a longer term and they make most of the overpayments. One success story, I have one client, in the last 7 years, we've taken 13 years off his mortgage because he's made regular overpayments. And in fact, I was speaking to him on Monday night, and he is, obviously can't give away his details, he's very, very early 40s, and he's 4 years left on his mortgage now.
It's everybody's dream to be mortgage free, but
he's going to be mortgage free by the age 45.
Yeah.
You know, he's on the home straight. Him and his wife, both good jobs, earning both incomes, and 45 is going to be mortgage free. And that's simply been putting a wee bit aside every month and paying it off.
Snowballs. It takes a few years to see any impact, but it really snowballs in the last few years. Yeah,
it's a bit like doubling the penny every day for 30 days. You'll not notice it at the start, but if you've been doing it consistently for 4 or 5 years, you'll notice a big difference, especially when it comes to your mortgage.
That's incredible, because as you said there, Roy, it's everyone's dream to be able to pay off that mortgage, especially as you say, if they've struck maybe 13 years off your mortgage term, just by doing regular overpayments, and it probably, as you say, isn't that much where it's noticeable. But because it's regular and because you're constantly doing it, and it's just, as you say, chipping off the principal there, you're not losing any of that money and interest. And let's be honest here, if anyone is listening to this, you don't want to be losing money and interest, paying interest. Who wants to be, doing that? So why not do it that way and get it shortened down? Touching maybe on a few specifics then, Jim. Is there anything you could go into maybe in terms of different types of mortgages that are available for people? Is there different ones between obviously your first time buyer to your home mover, or is it kind of a broad spectrum across the board?
I suppose it's much of a muchness for everyone. You have your different mortgages, as in you have fixed rates, you have variable rates, you have discounted rates. Most people at the moment go on fixed rates. When it comes to mortgages, you'll notice you probably pay a bit more upfront when you're buying your first house or when you're moving house, because there's a lot of fees involved. When it comes to a remortgage, when you're coming to look at your deal again, you're getting free valuations from the lenders. If you're switching lenders, a lot of them are helping with the legal fees as well, whether that's in the form of cashback or providing legal services. So there's lots of different options, and it really depends on that person and what they're looking at. Whether it is a first-time mortgage directly through a lender, whether they're going through ownership, whether they've lost all sense and decide to go self-build. So the self-build mortgage as well. So lots of different options depending on their scenario and their needs and their budget, I suppose.
One of the things I was just going to pick up on there is have you noticed now, obviously, I don't want to get into the figures, interest rates and stuff like that, but since kind of those changes there and that uncertainty, are you seeing more people going towards a fixed rate, or are people sort of staying on a variable just to see what's happening?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. Whenever the rates first went up and there was sort of the blind panic, I suppose you could say, a lot of people were staying on variable rates or going with tracker rates. And the banks had changed their stance slightly, that they were letting people move on to the tracker rate and then there would be no early repayment charge. So if the rates dropped onto fixed, they would then move on to the fixed deal. We're finding now at the moment the tracker deals and the variable deals are higher than the fixed, so most people are going fixed. And 90% of our clients, and we've spoke to other lenders, and across the board it seems to be 90% of people are looking at 2-year fixed now. So 5-year deals are more appealing. The rate's lower, so your monthly payment's lower. But I think there's that general consensus across everyone. We're over the worst of it now. It's still not rosy, but we're over the worst of it. The rates have been dropping from October, and they're continuing to drop, even though the Bank of England haven't changed their rate. So the majority of people that I'm finding, whether they're coming for a remortgage or they're purchasing, the majority, unless they're budget driven, they're taking that 2-year option. I'm hoping that by the time we get to 2026, the Bank of England will have the rate down to that 2.5–3.5%, and then hopefully the fixed rates will follow. I think, my personal opinion, in 2026, when we're doing remortgages and purchases, we'll maybe see more people starting to move towards longer fixed deals.
And I suppose, is that just to lock it in, knowing this is what I'm going to be paying, this is what my mortgage is going to be essentially for the next 5 years?
Absolutely, and everyone's different. We have some people, they're not really worried what the monthly payment's going to be. They just want to know, I can go to bed tonight and not worry for the next 5 years. I can afford this no matter what. I'm sticking with that. You get other people and they almost want to have a wee bit of a gamble and they think, right, I believe it's going to come down, so I'm happy to pay the extra on the 2 years and hopefully make it up then when the rate comes back around. So there's no one size fits all. It really depends on the client, their attitude to risk and their budget.
I suppose you find that out whenever you would speak to them as such then, get their details, be able to understand what their needs are, and then kind of be able to advise nearly on what would suit them best then.
Yeah, well, it's sort of interesting. Believe it or not, as mortgage advisors, we're not allowed to advise if it should be a 2-year or 5-year. We can certainly give our opinion, but you have to show the client all the options and then help them land on the right decision for them, which is why we can't say everyone's 2-year, everyone's 5-year, because different people have different needs. Both you guys might, Chris, you might say, well, I'm going to be moving into this house for the first time, so I don't know if I'm going to like the area, don't know if I'm still going to be working in the area, so I'll go 2-year. Whereas Roy might say, all right, well, I'm settled here, I'm happy enough, that works within my budget, and I don't think the rate's going to drop that much, so I'll take 5-year. So it's just about, it's having a sensible conversation with clients and making sure that you're working with them to suit their needs.
That's probably very similar to what you would come across, Roy, then dealing with clients and kind of making sure that it's a sensible option, going forward, that they understand what they're getting themselves into.
Well, from a legal point of view, our role is just to reinforce their mortgage offer and to know that they're aware of it. I suppose at that point they've already made their choice and they've worked out their figures. So it's really just as a probably a comforter to make sure that there's the affordability there. But then we also have to just then remind them of their legal side of things, which are that if they don't make the monthly payments, the inevitable could happen. And then also as well, we find, which is another topic, is a lot of people think, well, the bank surveyed the house and the house it's worth that and it's all well and good. But a bank can't offer you money on a property that's fallen down. At the end of the day, that's still the market value. So don't just take it for granted that if the bank's giving you money, the house is fine. So we're looking at it from a slightly different angle, but we just bolster the figures and run through with them anyway, just to make sure that's what you're paying, and this is what's going to jump up to once that term's up. And again, if you don't pay it, they take it away.
So going back to what you were saying about the value then, Roy, would you be recommending that people get a home buyer's report on top of the lender's value?
So from the value point of view, when we always point out the bank does a survey, a lot of people say it's a survey, but in fact it's not a survey, it's a valuation. There's a big difference between the two. Evaluation is the bank's just checking that you're not overpaying for the property, whereas yes, we would always recommend you get a survey done. And the older the house, generally the more detailed the survey, just to make sure is there damp, is there woodworm, does the house need rewired, and is there subsidence, is there moving in the property? So all those things that need to be checked as well, because a lot of people think that has to be disclosed to them, but when you buy a house, I always refer to it as like buying a second-hand car. The only difference is you don't get to test drive it, you just simply walk around it, and once you buy it, it's yours, so you need to do all your due diligence homework beforehand.
It's really educating the clients. I use someone I know as an example. They bought a house. We would tell everyone, get a home buyer's report. And I think what put people off is that they have to pay for it, whereas the bank's providing the free valuation. But I know someone bought a house, decided not to get the free or to get the home buyer's report. There was damp, there was an issue with the boiler, there was an issue with the water tank, and there was lots of different issues. And for a home buyer's report, usually £450, £500, it's so worth the money. Get it done, get someone out who doesn't have skin in the game, who's going to give you an honest appraisal and point out those issues. It's so important.
Credit reports. Obviously, when it comes to getting your mortgage, there's credit scores. That's all obviously factored in then when it comes to getting your mortgage. In terms of the approval process and sort of bringing in the likes of those credit reports, what can sort of applicants do to maybe increase their chance of getting a mortgage? This will probably be geared more towards your first time buyers maybe, but like what could they do to maybe increase that? I'm going to probably nearly give you the answer and say speak to you early.
Absolutely. When it comes to buying a house, the very first thing you should do, obviously you should be saving up for your deposit, but the first thing you need to do is check your credit score. It's so vitally important, and people don't realise how much of an impact it has on your ability to get a mortgage. We had found lots of people that earning good money, have good deposit, everything else is fine. Then when it comes to look at their credit score, when they were in uni, they took out a credit card, maxed it out, and then just forgot about it and didn't worry about it. But that's going to be a default on their file. It's going to sit there for 6 years. And how I try to explain it to a client, if I ask Roy if I could borrow £10 off him, and he thinks, right, well, Jim seems like he'd afford £10, that's fine. But then during the coffee break, he chats to you, Chris, and you go, don't know, Roy, I lent him £5 6 months ago, and he never gave me it back. You're going to think twice about giving me the money. So lenders and anyone who uses credit, they all do the same thing. They want to look and see what your history is. And if they want to know, I think it's important that you know yourself. So you need to take a look at your credit score, make sure everything's fine on it. If it's not the end of the world. There are lenders who will work near prime products. So if you have had a wee bit of a blip a few years ago, that they'll look past it. There's lenders that if you've settled those problems, that they'll look past it again. But if there's possibly something sitting there that hasn't been settled, get it done now before you're at the point where you've put an offer on a house. So I would always say to people, I know we don't all know when we need to make that move, but if you're thinking you're going to buy a house and let's say you're sitting there and you're going, right, by the end of 2025 I'm going to be buying a house, look at your credit report now and see can you fix it, because if there is something on it, maybe it's a small default that's been with a mobile phone company, head now, get it cleared off your credit report, and then see how you're sitting in 12 to 18 months, and hopefully in that period of time you're in a position to get your mortgage. And we've done that with people. I've seen people where we've had to wait 2 years until they've got the credit report up to scratch, and then make sure that they're good to go. Another thing where people maybe misinformation, they think they need credit cards to build up their credit score. You don't. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure all your post is going to the same address. Make sure you pay your mobile phone on time. If you've broadband, pay it on time. If you've overdraft in the bank, try not to go into your overdraft. All these things will help your credit score. There's no need to take out loans and take out credit cards just to build your credit.
There's obviously, because there's a big debate whenever it comes to that kind of like, what do I do as a young person, to build my credit score? What do I need to do? Do I need to take out credit cards? Do I need to be putting 50 quid on it and then clearing it off the next day? Like, obviously it all helps, but as you say, some of those generalized things are just easy done. Could be over a couple of months or whatever, and you should start to see your credit start to build back up again.
Absolutely. And there's a difference between a low credit score and a bad credit report. So we've got plenty of young first-time buyers that have came to us with a low score, but their credit's fine. It's just they've never had a line of credit, and the lenders are happy with that as well. So I would never tell someone get a credit card. If you insist that you want to get a credit card, what I tell my clients, only use it for things that you can clear there and then. So if you've £40 in your pocket, put £40 of diesel on your card, and then when that bill comes in, clear it. You don't want to let it run past the 30 days and then you get hit with interest, and that's where you get into trouble. But if you've got a mobile phone contract, it's going to show up on your credit score. If you've got any type of bank account, the history of that bank account is going to be there as well. People don't realise if they've got a credit union and and have had a loan from their credit union, maybe for their first car, that shows up on it as well. So you don't necessarily have to take out loads of credit to try and build a credit score.
One scenario we've seen a lot of is they've missed a payment on their mobile phone, and it could be a bill sitting there as low as £10 or £20, and that's been sitting there for a few years, and that's it. A bank won't even lend on something so small, so it's so important just to make sure all those bills are paid, no matter how trivial they are.
The one story that it seems to keep repeating, we get a lot of clients that have went for a year to Australia. They've came back, and 4 years later they're in a position to buy a house. And any of them that's had an issue, their last mobile phone bill, they've left mum the money to pay the bill. Mum's got blamed for not paying the bill. And I actually remember one, it was a £63 default, and that was stopping them getting the mortgage. I'm dealing with one at the moment actually, and it's a default, and it was an oversight. I had £99, and we cannot get that person a mortgage for a £99 default. But all they need to do is go and settle it. Once that shows up on their credit report, it's settled, they'll be fine. People don't realise how important those phone bills, probably the two worst ones that we've seen are broadband providers and phone bills. They're the ones that people tend to forget about. And it's maybe been because they've moved house, forgot to cancel the contract, but yeah, it has a big impact on the ability to borrow.
It's crazy to think that, you know, someone could go out and borrow money for a £210,000 house, and yet a £99, you know, bill is stopping them from getting that.
Yeah.
You know, and albeit I know it's obviously then that level of sort of near like trust or whatever, we can trust you to obviously lend you the money, you're going to pay it back, but you know, for such I'd nearly call it a nominal amount in comparison, that can really hurt you. Like,
but then if you look at it from the lender's point of view, if they're looking at your report and going, if Chris can't pay £99, how is he going to pay £800 a month? And that's the issue.
It's understanding that, you know, for some people, getting that understanding there. In terms of then sort of specific products out there that could maybe help people get on the ladder, co-ownership's obviously a big one. What is your thoughts then obviously on co-ownership?
I love co-ownership, I really do, and I think the problem with it again is there's not enough education on co-ownership. A lot of mortgage advisors don't like it. I can make my own assumptions why they don't like it, but I can't say for sure why they don't like it. We get many people coming in and they're not in a position to buy a house at the moment, and I'll always then at that point suggest co-ownership, and I always get the same reaction: don't want anything to do with it, it's a scam, want nothing to do with it. But when you try to dig into, well, why do you not want anything to do with it, nobody actually knows anyone that's been affected negatively through it. It's always, will a friend of a friend, or this happened. Nobody tends to know. So essentially it's a charity in Northern Ireland to help people onto the property ladder who can't get on. They'll buy up to 50% of the property, and you rent their 50% off them, 2.5%, and then you get a mortgage for the other bit. But it's your house. People think, oh, co-ownership own half the house. You sign a 99-year lease, you will never see co-ownership unless you're looking to sell the house or you're going to make structural change. You need to let them know. They'll let you decorate the house however you want. If you want to buy it off them, you can. If you don't, they're never going to chase you to buy it off. It's a fantastic way to do it. And we've seen a few different ones. We did a couple in a few months ago. Didn't want to go down the co-ownership route. So they were going to buy a house for 120,000, and their words to me were, we'll buy this for now until we're in a position to buy a better house, and then 2 or 3 years time we want to buy a better house. I said, well, do you realise if you just use co-ownership now, you can buy a house for 195,000 and 2 or 3 years buy them out, and you're not having to go through this process again in 2 or 3 years. And once I showed them how co-ownership works, sent them to their website to see some of the testimonials and break down the mechanics of it, they came back the next day and they're like, this is the best thing we've ever seen. Showed it to mum and dad and they think it's amazing. And at the moment now, with their application approved with co-ownership, properties approved with co-ownership, and they've got their application into the lender, and they've went from £120,000 house. It was actually the one that settled on was 175, which they could not afford without co-ownership.
It comes down to, I think we're obsessed in Northern Ireland where everybody wants to own their own house, and the only way to get that is with a bank.
Yeah.
So then people are maybe thinking, this is interesting, I've never heard of that, those views on it before, but obviously people are thinking, well, this is a third party coming in and owning part of the house,
Mm-hmm.
but they're looking at it from a negative point of view rather than saying
Absolutely.
this is a means of actually helping me
Absolutely.
own the house, and it's so cost effective, and they're a dream to work with.
They are.
from start to finish.
They're brilliant, and I know solicitors love them.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a slick process. I think one of the other things we get on co-ownership that people will come back and go, but if I buy the house now at 150,000 and they're putting in 50%, if I go to sell the house and it's worth 200, they're making money. Like, but so are you.
Yeah.
You know, they're only getting their 50%. They're only getting what they put in. Likewise, if the house went for the same money as it is now, or it's downvalued, they're only entitled to 50%. So, you know, if someone's willing to give you that foot up on the ladder, if I wasn't a homeowner and I couldn't afford a house without ownership, I wouldn't give it a second thought. I'd do it tomorrow.
It makes a difference if either owning the house or listen, don't buy a house and you have to go and rent
Yeah,
on the private market instead. So
keep renting at £800 a month when you can afford the same house for maybe 600.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was going to pick up on there, Jim, was like we talked before about the payment difference with going with co-ownership, and then the payment difference then potentially going with the bank is, you know, there could be a couple £100 in that as well per month.
Yeah, I was talking to a client today and they're looking at a house at 170,000. The mortgage, so going without co-ownership, it was working out £970 a month, with co-ownership at 600. So it's over £300 a month to saving, which again, that's money that they can put into the house. They have kids, so it helps. It, you know, and the good thing with co-ownership, you don't have to put down a deposit. With lenders that'll work with no deposit, or if you do have a deposit, you don't have to put it all down. You can keep some of it and use the rest to furnish the house.
You know, it's crazy to even think, but like the difference in that £300 a month or whatever, and if you were just casually putting, say, even 200 that aside and letting the pot build or whatever, buying back a 5 or 10% stake back into the house, and you've increased from 50 to 60% and do the same again, you know, it makes sense.
Yeah. And by the way, that £600, that includes the rent to co-ownership, so it's not 600 plus your rent. In total, it's over £300 a month cheaper.
It's something that it's definitely, especially in current day and age when so many people are struggling to even try and get on the property market, you know, for something there that's more feasible to be able to even try and get your first step there. I know obviously there is terms and conditions who can obviously be able to do it. I'm fairly certain it's first time buyers, right in saying? No. I know I'm pulling out a lot of stories. There was one couple in particular I was sticking in my head. Years ago, through no fault of their own, they were forced out of the area that they were living in, and they had to sell their home. The rent that then was over 20 years, and they contacted me just around the time of COVID. And again, it was one of the ones we always get. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get a mortgage soon, but I want you to look at it. And through co-ownership, we got that couple back onto the property ladder, and now they're homeowners again. They're in late 40s. And again, the thought, we're too old, we're not going to qualify for co-ownership. As long as you don't own a home. That's probably, so you have to be over 18, you have to live in the UK, obviously, in Northern Ireland, and as long as you're not a current homeowner, co-ownership will consider an application. Just, you know, the positives around it are insane, you know, so it's definitely, and the likes of yourself there, Jim, that obviously if people can go and speak to and you can actually then properly explain it to them, they understand them, would be there, that, you know, the consideration might come with that then.
Yeah.
Obviously then, you know, going through the process, you've touched sort of mortgages, obviously help with that. In terms of your remortgaging then, you obviously hear, you know, the stories in the news now where obviously as people are coming maybe to the end of their 5-year fixed deals, you know, and they're coming off that maybe real quite low interest rate, at what stage should you be considering remortgaging? Is that something where you can contact them, or are they maybe coming to you 3 months before the deal runs out? At what stage would you consider that then?
So at the moment, I know some of this is changing back to what it was before everything went a wee bit wonky there, but at the moment you can look 6 months before your remortgage date, depending on the lender. Someone's a wee bit less, but most of them 6 months. People are of the assumption that they have to stay with their lender, and that's not the case at all. So once you're come to the end of your fixed deal, you're free to look about and see what your options are. What we do with our clients, as soon as they take a mortgage out, we put in the calendar for 6 months before the end of that fixed deal. We'll contact them. If we haven't heard from them within 3 months, I'm going to be standing knocking their front door. They need to look, they just don't realise. So the lender will send them out a letter, and say you're coming to the end of your fixed deal, this is what you can get. If you don't go on to your fixed deal, you're going to move on to the variable. The lender will keep chasing the ball. So if they don't do anything, they're going to move on to that variable. At the moment, 8.5%, some of the variable rates are. So what you really should do, whether you used a mortgage advisor before or not, see what your bank's offering you and go and take a look around. If you want to take the time and effort to go to all the different banks to check, by all means do it, or go and speak to the mortgage advisor who has access to pretty much every lender in the country, and they can look and see what your options are. And even if they didn't do your original mortgage and your best option is to stay with your original lender, they can still deal with that process for you, and then moving forward, keep an eye on it. So we've had a lot of people that's left it to 2 or 3 days before their deal ends, and we've come in and fixed them in with their current lender, but now we have it in the diary for when it comes around again, they can look at the whole market.
And then where I find as well, a lot of people overlook that if they are going to switch lender, they have to go through the mini legal process.
Yeah.
And then every day they're squealing because they just know that it's now costing a lot more every month than what it was.
Yeah.
So it's funny how they've become very focused
Yes.
at that point. Whereas, as you say, they're told they're notified 6 months beforehand,
Yes.
but they leave everything to the last minute. So if you're organised, you can save. It's not only, I always don't comment on saving money, it's saving the stress and the hassle.
Absolutely.
With a bit of organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think people just don't realise, and they don't realise how simple the process can be if you do it with enough time to spare. Unfortunately, life gets in the way and people leave it to lastminute.com to look at it. But if you're looking at it 6 months before, it gives you lots of options, whether you stay with your own lender or you're moving. And the other thing that it's worth looking at early, and we've been doing this for a lot of people, we fix people in at 6 months, but because we have access to the lender systems, let's say NatWest might email me today and say, Jim, in 24 hours we're reducing our rates. When that rate comes down, we can go back into that client's deal that we fixed in for them and cancel it and amend it and take the lower deal. So anything that they're looking at the 6 month, that's the worst case scenario. You'll definitely not pay more than this, but if you do this early, we can keep an eye on it then and possibly get you the best deal. Again, another client I'm thinking of over in England, we got them a deal and it was over 5%. We kept an eye on it and got it down to 4.5%. Those rates have started going up again. So they haven't quite got to the switchover period, but we've kept them in at that 4.5. So we've saved them over £120 in total. And if they'd have waited until now, the payments would have been up again. So it's very important that they look at it and give themselves plenty of time to look at it.
I tell you what, if someone was to say to me I could save a wee bit of money, I'd be on the ball. Like,
Yeah.
That's your priority.
that's my priority. See, hey, if it's a tenner or whatever, I'd take it. One of the other big topics, Jim, is when it comes to self-employed people. Self-employed individuals or freelancers obviously looking to get a mortgage. Is there quite a bit of misunderstanding around kind of being self-employed, what you need essentially if you are self-employed when it comes to a mortgage?
Yeah. First of all, if you're self-employed, yes, talk to a mortgage advisor, but you need to sit down and have a chat with your accountant. I say this to everyone, this isn't me speaking bad of accountants. An accountant's job is to make sure you pay as little tax as possible. It's amazing how many self-employed people in Northern Ireland earn £12,500 a year, which strangely is the cut-off before you have to pay tax. And they all come, so it looks great, they're not paying tax, they're telling all their friends, go and see my accountant, you'll not pay tax. You'll also not be able to borrow money to go and buy Snickers at the shop. So you need to sit down with your mortgage advisor and work out, this is the type of house I'm looking at, this is what I want to buy. You also need to talk to your accountant and say, I need to make sure that I'm showing healthy profits. Now again, we legally can't turn around and go, this is how much you need to be earning, but you should be putting through as much as possible. So the process for self-employed person needs to start a lot earlier. And again, I think they just don't realise, because again, there's not that information. We're not taught it at school. You know, they teach us everything else. They don't teach us our finances at school up until a certain age anyway. So for self-employed people, usually it's an average of 2 years net profit. It's important that they realise it's net profit, because we get a lot of people coming to us, well, my turnover's 80 grand a year. Yes, but your net profit's 12. Most lenders will lend roughly 4 to 4.5 times either your employed salary or your self-employed net profit. So if you're only putting through 12.5 grand, if you're lucky you can borrow 50,000. it's not going to buy you much of a house. So chat to your accountant early, chat to your mortgage advisor early. If you're thinking of buying a house, you probably need, I'd said at the start, you want to go a year or 18 months. If you're self-employed, you probably want to be looking at 3 years before you think you're going to be at that point to make sure you're putting through enough.
It's a big thing, you know, because so many people now are maybe going self-employed or freelancing, they're jumping on that, you know, and if you are thinking about it, as you say, you know, if you're earning 12,000, you know, pounds a year, 12,500 pounds a year, you know, and you're looking at maybe a £200,000 house, how are you going to be able to afford living
Exactly.
on 12,500 pounds a year? You know,
and it's based also on taxed income. So we do get a lot of people, and if I'm ever asked this, I'm going to deny it, but we get a lot of people who say, well, I can afford it, I'm paid this amount, but they're obviously not declaring everything. So that's where they're in that grey area. They might physically look like they can afford it, but on paper, it looks like they can't afford their day-to-day living costs.
Yeah.
It's really important.
It is, you know, and that's why I wanted to get your opinion, sort of, you know, you probably see it, you know, on a day-to-day basis. It's when it comes to that, as I say, it's becoming more and more prominent in terms of the amount of freelancers, the amount of self-employed. So I was interested to see what your thoughts were on it. Sort of finishing off or getting to that point, we've talked, Roy, numerous occasions about the property market bubble in Northern Ireland. It seems to be very different over here in terms of the mainland. Do you see sort of Northern Ireland in its own kind of wee bubble at the minute because of the lack of demand or the lack of supply?
Yeah, we do seem to have our own wee ecosystem over here. We don't get affected as much as the mainland. It's, what are we going now? Brexit was what, 2018? So from 2017, from when I first started doing mortgages actually, I've heard people going, market's going to crash. Brexit, market's going to crash. I'm like, we're not seeing that. COVID came along, market's going to crash, and it just went the opposite direction. Tories are calling an election, market's going to crash. It never seems to happen. The market is, to me, it's still healthy in Northern Ireland. There's lots of demand. The supply actually seems to be the issue. I actually noticed yesterday there's been an announcement 200 new houses are being built in Portadown.
That's right, yeah.
Which will have a big impact. And the estate agents that we work with as well, they all say the same thing. They just can't get the properties. There's not enough properties out there. So if there was, there'd be more selling. So I think that's what's keeping the market afloat. The fact that we're not being swamped with properties. Probably a wee bit different. Roy maybe had more experience than me whenever the bubble did burst in 2008, 2009, that the market was then being flooded with properties and there was lots about, whereas now there's not that many properties. Whether you're looking to buy for a house to live in or an investment, there's not a lot there, so that's keeping the value of the houses up there.
Probably one of the big things, you know, I think it's more just the fact of, as you say, the properties just aren't there. But one of the things we've touched on, and Roy's a bit more experience on it, is the amount of people that are coming or maybe searching from the mainland and thinking about coming across the NI based on the property prices.
Yeah, we've had that too. Yeah, that happens quite a bit. When they can't believe how much house they're getting here for the money. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I have one story. There's a girl moving from London to here, and her friends were telling her not to do it. They're like, no, are you sure? You know, are you going to actually buy the whole house for that price? They just couldn't believe it, and there she was laughing because she was getting a house for whatever it was then.
Yeah.
And basically, her friends in London were renting a room. Yeah. In a house for maybe £1,000 each, and she was getting the whole house at that time for maybe £300 a month. So yeah, some difference.
We had doctors. So whenever COVID first hit and the Northern Ireland market closed, we started targeting NHS staff in London, and we got 2 doctors buying the first property. So they bought a 1-bed apartment near St Thomas's Hospital in London, and it was £725,000. And I actually sent them. The house is still for sale actually. There's a house just down the road from me in Marlin. I think it's a 6-bedroom house. It's sitting on an acre of land for 650,000, I said, guys, consider coming to Northern Ireland. I was like, you're getting a lot more. So, but we have noticed quite a few people, especially from COVID actually, that have relocated to Northern Ireland. Because a lot of people's working remotely now, so they don't need to be, within half an hour's drive of their work. So there has been a lot more people coming over and getting the value for money.
Welcome to NI, everyone.
Absolutely.
Final piece then, Jim. What would be your piece of advice for, this could be for anyone really, whether they want to start their home ownership journey, whether they're maybe moving house, maybe they're remortgaging. What would kind of be your piece of advice just in general for people?
I would say get your ducks in a row. Don't wait until you think, now I want to do it. Get around the estate agents, get to know the estate agents, let them know what you're looking for and what you think your price range is going to be. Obviously, before you work out your price range, get talking to a mortgage advisor. I know a lot of people say go to your bank. You can find that your own bank could treat you harsher than anyone else. If you've had internal credit issues with them, maybe bounced in and out of an overdraft, they might fail you. So chat to the mortgage advisor, see how much you can borrow, get a plan in place to get your deposit, get to know the estate agents in the area, let them know what you're doing. And also, vitally important, I know we talked about this offer, make sure you have a solicitor that does conveyancing. Just because the family have used the same solicitor for 40 years and have done all the wills, doesn't mean that's the guy or the lady that's going to be able to do the conveyancing for you. We've hit bumps in the road before where people have used a family solicitor that hasn't done a mortgage for 2 or 3 years, and then that holds up the whole process. And this isn't a plug for Canton Law, but you really do, and I mentioned to you, Chris, if you needed knee surgery tomorrow, you wouldn't get your GP to do it. You would get a specialised consultant. So it should be the same for every area of the home buying journey. Don't get in a handyman to do any electrical work around your house. Don't get in a solicitor that deals just with family law or business law. Get in a proper conveyancer. And the same when it comes to your mortgage advisor and everyone involved in the journey. You might think you're paying a little bit more, but it could save you hundreds, if not thousands, in the long run.
It saves time and it comes back to what I said earlier on, stress.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, I've come across a lot of people that price round and think, oh well, I've saved £100 or £150. But I would say if you went back to them on the day they got their keys, would they still feel as happy and delighted that they saved £150? Or I would say give them the option, would you have paid £500 more to get in 3 weeks ago and no hassle? I would say bite your arm off. So
absolutely, I say to everyone, like we'll supply recommendations and quotes for conveyancing, but we'll always say, don't just take my word for it. Look about, look at reviews, talk to people that you know that's moved house recently. Have they used the same solicitor? Who have they used? How did they find the process? That we get a lot of referrals for clients coming to us to look at mortgages, because again, their friends and family have said, Jim keeps everything simple, doesn't try to sound like the smartest guy in the room, he's always there to answer the call, and that's what you want through everyone involved in that home buying journey. So yeah, £150 that when they get to the end of it, they'd wish they'd paid £600 extra to have the right person.
yeah.
That's us for episode 16. Jim, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks,
Really
Lee.
appreciate it. Great insight into that side of things in terms of mortgages and everything in between there. I think we touched on quite a bit. Roy, thank you again for once again turning up.
Pleasure.
This is the long run joke that Roy just about turns up.
Always late.
So we always thank him then just for making sure that he actually does come here. Episode 16. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.